may be demands on them to actually perform certain amount of training, and they just don't have it in their budget to be able to do so. Where on some of the larger organizations in the UAE have devoted an awful lot of money to training, and they are reaping the benefits of training because their staff are more motivated. So that is, yes, that is one factor. The other factor that you've got in the UAE that I found sometimes is the language barrier, especially with the operational staff. There is a lot of problems in terms of the language barrier and getting your message across in the most efficient and effective way. And thirdly, there's sometimes there's apathy. So there's apathy surrounding the managers and the supervisors in the sense that, as we said before, they don't see the point in it, so they're holding you back. So you've got human factors that hold you back. Yes, you've got financial factors that may hold you back, and you also may have you've also definitely got time factors that hold you back, because one of the things that is always a problem is, when do you find the time to train your staff? Do you take them off the job? Do you keep them on the job and train them? Do you train them out of hours? It's all a cost factor. So yes, there is a huge cost to the organisation, but if planned properly and a proper structure, then it can reap its benefits. And the one thing that we need to understand is that not all training has to take place in day one. Sometimes I get the impression that people think because somebody says, well, we need training, it needs to be done. No, it doesn't. You can plan a training program a year ahead if you wanted to, but you just need to make sure you cost it properly to make sure it's effective.
Definitely, definitely. One more question I have. Why is it important for the cleaning staff to be presentable and interact with customers while also consistently presenting the cleaning contractor and the facility in a positive light?
Well, I mean, part of that question's been answered, really. I mean, your operational staff are a representation of your company. It's a representation of your company's culture. If, in my personal view, if you allow the staff to be slovenly, that if you allow the staff to go into work dirty, their hair not combed, their fingernails not clean, etc., their equipment is not clean, it's a reflection on you as an organization. It's saying to me, well, what kind of management structure have you got that allows the cleaning operatives to look scruffy, to look dirty? Their equipment looks dirty. I think sometimes what we have in our industry is that people forget the key word. Part of what we do is to clean. If we can't keep ourselves clean and keep our equipment clean, how are we going to keep our clients' premises clean?
True, that's interesting. So Manuela here, she would like to thank you for answering her query. Mr. Rajiv has another question. He says, do you think disciplinary action works better than supportive action? Here, supportive action means recurrence in refreshment training.
No, supportive action would always be the first action you should take. What you need to be able to do is support the staff through the process, find out why he or she cannot or will not do a particular process. If you feel at the end of the day that that person is undermining what you've done in terms of your support, then disciplinary action may be necessary. But disciplinary action should be the last resort.
Definitely, definitely. He agrees with you. And we have another question from Tamudzai. Tommy, do you think organizations do take training seriously in Middle East, or is it just a requirement on paper? I have seen and heard much about it, but have also seen companies look at it and go for the cheapest contractor.
I mean, that's two different things. I'll take the easiest one first. The clients will look for the contractor that delivers the cheapest service. That's without a doubt. But training is always secondary when it comes to selecting a particular contractor. I think that as I said, in the UAE, there is a good training. There is a good training culture in a lot of companies in the UAE, and what will eventually give an even playing field is that clients will ensure that when they take on a contractor, that they're working on a level playing field. So, i.e., if they request that the contractor has a certain level of training for its staff, then that should be done for everybody. And that way is the only way that the standard will raise. There is no point. There is no point in me training my staff, and the contractor down the road doesn't train his staff, and the contractor down the road, he gets a job because he's cheaper. Well, that makes a mockery of the whole thing. So until some of the clients change their attitude and say, okay, this is what we want this level of training, this is the kind of qualification we're looking for the staff to have, and everybody works in an even playing field, then that's fine. If companies are penalized for not having any training and they don't win any contracts, they will soon change their mind.
Definitely, Tommy. What are the different types of certifications cleaning contractors should opt for, and what is the value which each brings?
In terms of certification, there's various. I mean, there's various things that you can do. You know, you can go down the City and Guilds route. You can go down various other routes. There's like Highgate. There's ISSA. Obviously, you've got BICS. Obviously, that provide what you need to do. Certification is not really the major factor. It's the benefits that qualification will bring to the company and will bring to the operative. It doesn't really matter. You can have an MBA or whatever the case may be for every single clean operative. That still doesn't mean you're going to win the cleaning contract. So what you need to be looking at first of all is the content of the training. Is it relevant for what you want to do? Is there certification at the end of it? And the certification, as I said, is only a validation that it's been done, it's been completed. It doesn't mean that the person is doing it properly. And you just keep retraining. You just need to train and retrain.
All right, we have another question from Manuela, who asks, what is the difference between training and certification according to you? Also, what is the difference between generalized training and certified training?
Generalized training. Okay, let's take the first one. Can you give me the first question again, please?
What is the difference between training and certification according to you?
Okay. Well, the actual training is the actual doing itself. So it's actual performing something. It's performing. When I say training, it's about whether it be sitting in the classroom, whether it be soft skills, whether it be supervision training, whether it be skilled training. That's what I mean about training. Certification and validation is the outcome of that training, and anything else you've done prior. So this, as I said, the certification is really about validating, saying that that person has been on that course, that person's completed that course to a certain level. Yeah, does that answer a question?
Does that answer your question, Manuela? While she replies, we'll move on to another.
What was the second part of her question?
The second part of her question was, what is the difference between general training and certified training? I think she means in terms of value.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what she means by general training. I think that, as I said, I think training should be focused on first of all, the training should be focused on the job role, not the person. So if you've got a supervisor, a good supervisory course will be beneficial to that supervisor. How to manage their staff, how to manage conflict. If you've got an operative, then clearly that operative will need to understand how to do hands-on processes, how to mop, how to sweep, how to change a dispenser, how to clean a toilet. They will benefit from them roles. Whether they're certificated or not, that is neither here nor there. What the organization should really be doing is demonstrating that they've actually taken part in some form of training. If there is a certificate at the end of the day, then that's just a bonus, but it's not the key driver. The driver should be: is the training focused? Is the training focused? Is it relevant to what the staff are doing? And does it perform? Does it actually serve a purpose?
Definitely. Tambuds, I would also like to agree with you on your responses and comment that the content should be relevant. Yes. Rajiv has another comment to make. He says that accreditation is really helpful for contract cleaning. Do you agree?
Yeah, any form of accreditation is good. Don't get accreditation for the sake of getting accreditation. There's various accredited bodies out there. We have parallel bodies that you use in the UAE and we use in the UK. So, for instance, you've got CIMS, which is coming in. That's an accreditation that can be used from ISSA. You've also got the ISO, various disguises. You can use them. But the one thing that when organizations go for these forms of accreditation, they have to realize that there is a commitment to be able to deliver and certify in terms of produce evidence that they are training. So, getting an accreditation for organization is not that easy. There are different factors that are involved. You have to promote training, you have to do training, you have to have a budget for training. So to be able to get these accreditations, that's fine if you do achieve them, but you have to maintain them. Once you get them, you can't just sit back and say, I'm never going to do that again, because next year you have to do exactly the same thing and give evidence.
That's true. But how frequently do you think training should be imparted within organizations?
Training, you should train every opportunity you get. Whether it's a 2 minutes hands-on training showing somebody what to do, or whether it's formalized training, it should be done as often as you can do it. And once you've done it, the person should be retrained. They should be evaluated to make sure that they're actually doing what they've been told, because there's no point in training them and having no evaluation. So once that operative or that person's been trained, you should talk to them. What did you learn from it? What are you going to put into your job that's going to make it different, etc., etc. One of the things that we fail to do is we send people on training courses, but we don't talk to them after the training course. Nobody says, well, how did you get on with the training course? Did you learn anything from it? What can you implement from the training into the business? What's the point in sending them if they can't implement anything? It's just a badge for the individual. There's no point.
Definitely, I agree with you. And before we wrap up, I would like to ask our audience for any additional questions which they have for a Q&A session. And meanwhile, while they do that, do you have any additional comments which you'd like to make about this?
Yeah, I think that in the GCC, there's a lot going on. I mean, for those that know me a little bit better, they would know that I was there for a couple of years working with an organisation called METAC, and we were trying to promote training within the industry. And by and large, we were very successful in what we done and when we done it. We had, and what was encouraging was that we had an awful lot of people coming to us as individuals wanting to get training. Because they knew it would benefit them, and that was great. That was a great thing to see and a great thing to have. Unfortunately, things didn't work out for the organisation. We had to close it down, and I'd hoped somebody else would pick up the mantle as independent trainers. The problems that we were faced, not necessarily with the organisation, was in terms of the market, as I said, was cost factors. People hadn't actually costed in the training properly. They didn't really understand why they were doing it. They just wanted a certificate, but they didn't understand how to implement it, which was always a problem. And there was frustrations all round, really. The marketplace that you've got, especially with the events coming up, with 2020 coming up, I mean, that's a huge, huge thing for the country to be able to sort of do. And, you have, in my experience, you have some really good cleaning organizations that are working very hard behind the scenes to get their staff trained up, to get their staff ready for the event, not only in presentation, but delivery of the service. And that can only be commended because that the eyes of the world will be looking on you. And it's the usual thing, as a foreigner, when we go somewhere, one of the things that we look at is cleanliness. If somewhere doesn't look clean, that can spoil your whole holiday. So, I think that in your region, you're doing things, you're moving forward. Not everybody's doing it, and it's exactly the same here in Europe, exactly the same in the UK. So we're no different. But it's just as individuals and as organisations, trying to raise your level and raise the game really to ensure that you get the best from the market and you put yourself in a position to win new contracts.
Definitely. Mr. Rajiv has a question. He asks,
Sure.
Do you think client satisfaction survey is the most effective tool to choose training?
Can you repeat that question again, please?
Do you think client satisfaction survey is the most effective tool to choose training?
No, it's not the most effective. It's one tool you can use. Because if a client is not happy with a particular scenario, or there's a repeat of the same scenario several times, then clearly there's sometimes there is a training need. You know, if a client complains that a particular washroom hasn't been cleaned to a particular level 2 or 3 times, then surely there's a training need there. But the one thing that I found is that sometimes there's less training and more beating, in the sense that the supervisor or manager will go and shout at the operative and tell them to do this and do that. But that's not the way. What you need to be doing is looking at the operative, seeing what they're doing. If you look at an operative cleaning, you can see the mistakes, you can correct the mistakes. But is the hard thing to do is to beat and I mean metaphorically beat them, is to beat the staff once they've completed the task, and the staff are thinking, well, I've done okay, but the client's thinking, no, I'm not happy. So, you know, the client is a driver. I understand that. The client is very demanding. I also understand that. But what you have to be looking at is that if the organization is more demanding than the client, you will have less complaints.
Definitely. We have another question
Sure.
from Tambuzai, who asks, Tommy, are there programs to reach out to senior management within organizations for them to fully understand that cleaning is not as simple as perceived, for them to fully grasp that there are factors like safety, time management, and best practices to consider?
I don't know. I don't know of. I mean, we used to have it here in the UK, but I don't know of any one course now that embraces the cleaning industry in the manner that's been asked. There are different courses for different factors. Obviously, you can get different courses for health and safety. You can get different courses for management and management style. You know, you can get different courses for application in terms of how to do something, how to clean something, but there's no one course that will embrace that. And that goes back to what we were saying before, really. To do something like that is time consuming, so it will take a lot of time to train that person over a particular period, and it will be costly. So what you should be reaching out for is bite-sized training courses, maybe 1 day or 2 day training courses, and that will enhance the person's profile and should be able to enhance what they do.
All right. Namujai also says that some people seem to assume that cleaners can just be picked off the street and given a mop and bucket. Uh, some organizations, particularly. Do you agree?
Yes, because as an industry, we've not done ourselves any favors, and that goes back to where we start from our starting point. The point is that a lot of staff, and again, it's not only in your region, it's also in Europe and in England. We take people because we need a body to clean, and we put them in front of a mop and bucket or a broom, and we say get on with it, and they're not offered any particular training. And also, again, there's a client perception that you know cleaning is easy. So you know they're not willing to pay. They don't understand, and even now, having done this job for nearly 40 years, people say to me, well, what do you do for a living? And I say, well, I teach people how to clean. They say, what do you want to do that for? Why do they need training? Well,
Okay.
that just shows you the ignorance, doesn't it? That people don't even feel that cleaning operatives need to be trained, because they think, well, I can do it in my house, I don't need training, so they should be able to do it. Well, it's a completely different situation. Commercial cleaning
Of
and
course.
cleaning in domestic homes is completely different.
Of course, of course. We have another question from Mr. Prem Kumar. He asks, Tommy, how can we improve training effectiveness for staff in terms of methodology and frequency?
Um, the methodology in terms of, if you're looking, we're talking about hands-on skills training, but there's various methods you can use. Again, I think that for some organizations, there's too much emphasis on trying to get certification rather than actually doing the application of training itself. In certain instances, especially when you're using new equipment, there's nothing wrong with getting the equipment supplier in to do the training for you. They know the equipment better than you. Why would you spend a certain amount on the scrubber dryer and try to train yourself? No, what you do is you get the person who supplies it, they come in, they train you. That's all form of training. So what for me personally, the emphasis should be taken away from getting certification or validation, but actually the main focus should actually be on the training itself, not necessarily what the outcome is in terms of a bit of paper or a card.
Definitely. It looks like we've covered all of our questions. Is there anything else you want to touch before we wrap up?
No, I just want to say, I just want to say that, you know, in terms of what Clean Asia does and its support for the industry is you know, is really, really healthy and it's really good. I think that there are a lot of good people that I've met and yet to meet within the industry that are doing really, really good jobs in terms of training, developing their staff, raising the profile of their organizations. And there's a lot of companies out there that are trying to raise their profile but don't know how to do it. And the problem is, I think, is that they need to ask, they need to research and ask people who know what to do. But I'm very, very mindful that cost is a problem. It's a huge factor in what people do and how they do it and how to raise the funds. But what you should be doing is looking at how much are we going to spend to how much we will gain from actually doing that particular training. So there's lots to be done, and I think there's you know, there's a big conversation in terms of the industry in terms of how we move forward, how we make our industry look more professional, how we have more professional staff in terms of what they do, their application. And we should be at the point where nobody should be frightened that one person will leave from one company to the next because they've received a bit of training. You know, that just sums it up in itself. If somebody feels that they need a training course and then they leave to go somewhere else, then that's telling you a story in itself. So, no, all I can say is that the industry there is very buoyant. There's a lot to be done. There's a lot to be done here in the UK, even though we're more mature than you in terms of our industry. And training, you know, needs to raise its profile and it needs to be done properly. And that's really all I can say in terms of that particular scenario.
Well, that certainly means a lot. Before we proceed further and wrap up, I'd like to announce a special giveaway for all the attendees of this webinar. You can now download a free ebook called The Ultimate Guide for Cleaning Contractors, which is displayed on your screen. The ebook is free of cost and will help you improve your cleaning business. Before we wrap up, we have another question which has come up, Tommy.
Sure.
Mr. Prem Kumar says, we are in process of implementing eco-friendly chemicals. Can we compare the quality with which normal chemicals and eco-friendly, which is more important, cost or quality or safety?
Oh dear. Safety should always be the first factor. You know, clearly, any chemicals that you use should be safe to use, not only for the end user, but for the person that's actually using the chemicals. Whether they're eco-friendly or not, eco-friendly chemicals are on the rise in terms of the way they're used. And again, the problem that we've got is unless the client drives an organization to use eco-friendly chemicals, they won't do it. And the client is the driver here. I think that eco-friendly chemicals have their use in the market and will actually be used more prevalently. Maybe in 10 years' time plus. That may be too long, but we need to get that into place. And again, you know, the contractor needs to work on a level playing field in the sense that if they're bidding for a job, they should not be penalised because they're using eco-friendly chemicals that may be slightly more expensive than what we call conventional chemicals. So there are different factors in terms of doing that. I'm working with a supplier at the moment in terms of raising the profile of his eco-friendly chemicals, and the reason why it works is because he believes in it. He believes in it. He promotes it. He's passionate about it. He talks to his clients about it, and he gets his clients to embrace it. But if you just turn up and say, well, we're using eco-friendly chemicals and that's it, well, that's not a selling point. You need to sell it to the client. You need to tell them why they need it. You need to tell them what the benefits are with it. And again, if you're going to implement them, you've got to train your staff to use them properly. There's no point no point introducing it and then the staff in the background are using bleach. It doesn't work. So, you know, yes, there's always a benefit for it, and it will improve. It will not only improve the ecology, it would improve the way that you deliver your service.
Thank you for sharing your inputs, Tommy. We
No
also
problem.
have Tamudzai, Sally, and Deepak thanking you and thanking us.
Thank you.
I would like to thank them again for being avid listeners throughout our session. And we appreciate you being here, Tommy. And
No
we
problem.
hope this brief session improves the cleaning businesses of all our listeners. For those who haven't done it already, you can now download a free ebook, The Ultimate Guide for Cleaning Contractors, which comprehensively covers everything you need to make your cleaning business thrive. Thanks again for joining us today, and we'll see you next time. Thank you, listeners. Thank you, Tommy.
Thank you very much. Take care.